What's going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Now, listen, guys, I know what you're thinking. You're seeing the title of this video. You're going to come in here with a predetermined notion to say some stuff to me and say, Derek, why are you even having this conversation? Why? What are you doing? Well, listen, I just want to come out and I want to say it right off the top of the video so you guys can't yell at me throughout the video in the comments section or tag me on Twitter or any of this other crap about me saying that the Indianapolis Colts are in championship contention for 2023, because that is not what I'm saying. What we're stating is that due to some of the recent moves that were made for the Indianapolis Colts, on top of some of the already existing moves and already existing players that have been brought onto this team, we now believe that the Colts have a good chance at championship contention in the future. Not this year, in the future. So don't go tagging me on Twitter. Don't go comment in the comment section saying this year's a wash, okay? I know a lot of Colts fans out there are already sitting here saying like, man, there's some people that do think that this season could turn out to be pretty good for the Colts. I think there's still a lot of things that need to be fixed up. But nevertheless, again, when you look back at this sort of thing with championship contention, first thing you got to have is you got to have the right kind of coach. You have the right kind of mindset. You got to have the right kind of game plan. You got to have the right kind of guy to lead the locker room, right? And from all accounts, based off what we've seen, Shane Steichen surely seems like a guy that definitely could be at that level. Now, obviously, we won't know until we get a few years into it and then start seeing whether or not things go the way they need to. But I'm just saying that from a understanding of where Shane Steichen was just this last year, being a championship coordinator, being in that sort of environment, working with guys like Jalen Hurts and Justin Herbert and them, really gives me a lot more confidence in his ability to not only coach this young quarterback that we have now, but also to lead this team. So that's the first thing going into championship contention. You got to make sure you have a guy that specializes in something. And it's no doubt that Steichen definitely knows and understands what is going on in an NFL offense. And that's number one most important thing, especially when you have a young core of offensive guys that need to be coached. And that is the important thing, is for a guy who understands his players' weaknesses and strengths and knows how to play with them. So that's the important thing, first off. And then I mentioned the quarterback, Anthony Richardson. Again, guys, we won't ever know until Anthony Richardson is the real deal, until, maybe a few years down the line. It's going to be one of those things. And that was, again, the reason why I said right off the top, 2023 is not championship contention year. It's years after that that's going to be important. But I'm saying that with Anthony Richardson's latent ability and being able to do things that are so important for the game of football, his skill set and what he provides is going to be one of those aspects of the game where he is going to just absolutely dominate as long as Steichen develops a great game plan for him. If Steichen develops great game plans for Anthony Richardson, it is going to be insanely difficult for these teams to be able to handle Anthony Richardson. It is so difficult. I remembered for a long time how Cam Newton for many years, took over the league when it came to, being that dual threat quarterback. And then, Anthony Richardson is more athletic than that. And obviously he's a lot bigger than a Lamar Jackson is. and just as fast. Definitely not quite as shifty, but he is just as fast, and he's bigger than he is from an athletic standpoint. Just ultimately what came down to Cam Newton's thing was not being able to consistently throw the football once the coordinators started leaving, and he started getting in over his head after that Super Bowl loss, right? So it ultimately, again, is going to come down to Anthony Richardson, but the Colts now have who they believe is going to be their franchise quarterback going forward, and that is the important aspect of this whole thing, is to know that those guys are now there, and that is going to give the Colts a lot better chances at championship contention versus doing what we have been doing for the past 3 or 4 seasons prior, which was, jumping from quarterback to quarterback to quarterback. There wasn't a ton of people who thought Indianapolis could win a championship with Phillip Rivers, but it certainly gave Indy the best chance possible because Phillip Rivers was a very smart and dedicated football player. And that was why he was able to utilize Frank Reich's scheme a lot more often, because he had good offensive line play. He was smart, knew how to do things. At the end of the day, we know Anthony Richardson's smart. We know Anthony Richardson's very dedicated to being on the football field, at least from what we have seen so far. Now, how does that translate to a few years down the line? That's going to be the important part. We just know that he needs to get his skills tightened up, and he just needs to get the fundamentals right. Once he starts getting those, then you're going to see a drastic improvement in Anthony Richardson's throwing ability. And when that happens, this team immediately becomes a championship contender. Immediately when Anthony Richardson starts being that. Now, it's just going to take a while for that to get going. But, of course, there's a couple other things that, need to be put in place in order for, for a team to be able to be built, right? The Colts got these young secondary players in this draft to replace Stephon Gilmore and Brandon Faison, who were the veterans on this team last year. And you have, you pretty much the majority of your secondary is on their first deals. All the newcomers coming in, Isaiah Rodgers, Julian Blackmon, Rodney Thomas, all these guys. And except for Kenny Moore. I think Kenny Moore might be the only guy on the active roster with any serious playing time that is on a second contract looking for a third one. Outside of that, everyone is still on their first contract. So you have a young secondary that is going to be building in Indianapolis, and it's a huge thing to have a young nucleus of guys that can build with each other. That's such a huge aspect to building a great team. And obviously we talked about Josh Downs and, Anthony Richardson being able to connect with Josh Downs. And that was a very important aspect, and it's been working so far. Hopefully that we see that more often as time goes along this season and then in seasons to come. That will be a very important thing. And of course, like I said, there's plenty of talent on this team right now. This offensive line hoping to, kind of rebound from a bad year that they had last year. And then, some of these wide receiver pieces, very young. Defensive line pieces, a lot of them are very young, except for your guys in the middle. There's a lot of guys here that, really can make a big impact as long as Indianapolis is able to retain these players and they continue to build upon what it is that they're building right now. So that's really going to do it for this one, guys. Again, I'm going to preface it now. If you've made it to this far in the video, the Indianapolis Colts are not in championship contention for 2023. We're talking about in the years later, how are they going to look with Anthony Richardson at the helm doing what he is doing and everything else that's being built around this team. So that's going to do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts on, do you believe that now with Anthony Richardson and all these other pieces that the Indianapolis Colts have brought together, that they are now in championship contention for the future of this franchise. That's going to do it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always,